Well, this is take two. I did a video on what I did on the floor pans over the past few days, and somehow I ended up accidentally reformatting the memory card, so I lost all the videos. So I'll just show you what I did here. Okay, here's the floor pans on the underside. This is the driver's side floor pan, and basically what I did was anywhere where there was bare metal or weld seam shown, I spray primed with metal etching primer, let it dry overnight, then I painted it, let it dry overnight, and then I seam sealed it, let it dry overnight, and then I sprayed it with the rubberized undercoating. Now the seam sealer is basically on these seams for this just so more dirt doesn't get in the future and cause any additional issues. That I think was the reason why these rotted out, was the spot weld joint here, and dirt could get in there. So I sealed that joint up so it's not going to get dirt in there. And then the undercoating had a tube, so I was able to go inside of those holes and undercoat the inside of that. Now, as you remember in the video from in the car, I did paint the inside of those, so that shouldn't rust anymore. This is where I scraped undercoating off, and that was bare shiny steel there. So, you know, it looks pretty darn good. I mean, I don't think I can get the exact texture back, but that looks really good. That's the driver's rear pan. This is the front of the driver's rear pan. This is kind of where the seat bolts are there and there. There's 1 bolt, 2 bolts, 3 bolts, 4 bolts. And you can see the floor pan up on the driver's side. All nice and in good shape. So this is all set. It's not going to be any problems in the future. You can see where some of the undercoating that I scraped away there. But it looks good. I mean, if somebody wanted to shoot it with something to give it that original texture, they could. Now you can see over to the other side from here. And I'll go over to the other side. Now we're on the passenger side rear of the rear floor pan. So you can kind of see, you know, again, I seam sealed around this and sprayed undercoating in there. After the undercoating was set up, I did spray it with a satin black paint like I painted the rest of the undercarriage with, so it matches. And if somebody wants to, you know, touch up spots in the future underneath where undercoating peels or whatever, that's the advantage. So you can kind of see this is the brace here. This is where the seat bolt was originally, the seat belt bolt. There's another one there. But it came out pretty darn good. You know, it doesn't look modified in any way. Now, I can't really see the viewfinder, what I'm looking at here, so I'm sorry if it's not really shown. Now I can. But there you go. There's the front of that brace. There's a seat bolt. There's a seat bolt. There's a seat bolt, and there's a seat bolt. Give you an idea where I'm showing you in the car. This is the passenger side front floor pan. As you can see, the muffler's right there, so that's actually above the muffler. So it looks pretty darn good, I think. I think we'll call it good, the floor pan. So if the car is hoisted and you look underneath the car, it actually doesn't look all patched up or anything. It looks pretty original under here still. Want it to try and keep it looking original under here still. So it's good and solid, and shouldn't get any further rust if it's driven in the rain or anything. It's you know, it's not going to be in the salt or the snow or anything, so I'm not worried about that. But you know, I'm sure it'll get driven in the rain occasionally. I got caught in the rain a couple times last summer with it, and you know, it's just fresh water. It's not really going to hurt anything. So other than, you know, you got to take time to wash the car when you get done. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of show some of the floor pan. That's the front body mount, the very front of the, there's the exhaust to give you an idea of the floor pan, the muffler. So that kind of gives you an idea where I am on the car. Engine, transmission, cross member stuff. Front cross member, I think I'll grease up the chassis while it's up on the jack stand. So anyway, I just wanted to do some undercarriage video of the Catalina. And so everyone can see what I was doing to try and keep it, you know, fairly original looking underneath. I think it looks pretty darn good. So there's a little bit of where the undercoating was peeled too. I actually had to weld right in here, so some of that burned away. And but it looks good enough. It's not a Concourse 1,000-point show car. It's a Survivor, 1960 Pontiac that's a Survivor, and looks pretty darn presentable for the age of the car. I don't think you'll find too many cars of this age that look this good on the underneath. I don't even think the 59 Chevy looks this good on the underneath, so really happy with the way it looks. Turned out nice. Really nice, solid, clean car. Kind of where the drive shaft goes through. The X-frame. And the windows have been up in the car, so I had some people asking me if it smelled any better in the interior. It sure does. It has a slight new car smell to it, but it doesn't smell moldy and musty or or I shouldn't say mouse poopy or anything. It smells good in the car. It's nice not having some musty smell in there. So yeah, it looks nice and it smells good. I don't know if I've showed this in past videos or not, but I'm going to add a little of this video. I greased the chassis up, so there's a fitting there on the upper control arm. There's one on the rear of the upper control arm. I don't know if it shows up back there or not, but there's a grease fitting there, and the same on the driver's side. Grease fitting on the control arm there and back there. I don't know if that shows up, but there is a grease fitting back there. So there's one on each end of the upper control arms. And then underneath the car, now we're underneath the car and we're looking towards the front. So you got a tie rod in. This fitting here greases your pitman arm and your inner tie rod end. The inner tie rod end is just right there. So one fitting does both those joints, and then there's a fitting on the upper ball joint that faces forward, a fitting on the lower ball joint that faces forward. I don't know if I think that shows up in there, and the same on the other side. So we'll go over to the other side and take a quick. This is the passenger side. There's the fitting for the inner tie rod end and the idler arm. And then the idler arm has its own grease fitting on the chassis end. And again, the tie rod end. And you have the upper and lower ball joint on this side too. So I think what we're going to do, and again, this car, if you look, it has the original shock absorbers in there. We're going to adjust the brakes while the car is jacked up. These old cars do not have self-adjusting brakes, so I'll show you how you adjust the brakes. First things first, when it comes to adjusting brakes, get yourself a decent brake spoon or brake adjusting tool. Don't just get a dime store one. You want a good one. So there's a little rubber cap on the backing plate here. That shows up right there. It'll pop out. And that gives you access to the adjuster. Now, as you can see, I can turn this wheel and there's zero shoe touching the wheel. You want to adjust these so they're even, so you don't have brake pull when you hit the brakes. If one is tighter than the other, the car will tend to pull one way or the other, and you don't want that. So you just stick this, and one side is left hand thread, one side's right hand. So you just do it all the same. There's a little I don't know if that shows up in there or not. There's a little wheel in there. And your spoon, you can move that one click at a time. And I'll do maybe 3 clicks at a time. So that was 3. And then I'll roll the wheel. See how it's just barely touching now? I don't know if you can hear that because the furnace is running. So I might just tighten it up 1 or 2 more clicks. That's 1, 2. Now you can hear the shoes hitting the drum slightly. And I think I'm just going to do 1 more click. And this car didn't really pull or anything, so they're adjusted pretty evenly. I don't know if that sound shows up in there or not. The front ones are pretty easy because you don't have any drag like the differential. You have the spider gears. I mean, I'll put the transmission in neutral, but it doesn't matter. You still have a little bit of drag from the differential. So that's 1 more. That makes 7. And I count them because then I can do the same with the other side and go from there. So 1 more click and we'll call it. I think this side adjusted. Okay, that was 7. It's still a little, could go a little more. I've never adjusted these brakes since I started driving it. I drove it a lot over the summer, and like I say, they're not self-adjusting, so. And that looks pretty good right there. It's, see, you can see where it catches some spots and comes to a stop. You just want it so just barely touching. So that side we'll call good. And then we'll go over to the other side, and again we'll do them about the same. So you put your grommet back in so you don't get moisture in the backing plate. Okay, this is the driver's side all adjusted up. Can you hear it now? So that's just barely touching. Now I'm going to go push the brake pedal and then spin them both and see how they both feel, and then we'll go to the rear brakes. The reason why I push the brake pedal is just make sure the shoes are centered inside your drum. Now I'll spin the other one and see what kind of it does. That one seems like maybe 1 click tighter than this one. So I'm going to tighten this one up 1 click. And that's more like about what the other side is now. So I'm going to call the front brakes adjusted. And I think they both feel about the same. This one maybe, I think they're both about the same. I think that's good enough. That little bit you won't feel in the pull, and you get them pretty close to where they feel the same. Always make sure you put your rubber plugs back in. So we'll call the front brakes adjusted. Now we'll go do the rear brakes. All right, we're at the rear brakes. Now make sure your parking brake's released and your transmission's in neutral. I used the parking brake, so I just released it. This actually feels pretty good. Generally, your front brakes will wear twice as much as your rear. You'll go through 2 sets of front shoes to 1 set of rear. And I'm not going to even fool with that. That feels really good. So let's go check the other side. All right, we're on the passenger side now, and again you can see where the grommet is there for the adjuster. And this one's grabbing about the same too. You can see all those weights on there. Generally that's not, a good idea, but with these wide white wall tires, They're harder to balance. So it's not uncommon to see a slug of weights on a wide white. But generally when you see that, the thing to do is break the tire down and turn it on the rim quarter or half turn. Sometimes when they balance out, the tires on this car are balanced really well. And they did turn this on the rim a couple times to try and, you know, not have so much weight here. But that's just the nature of the beast with these, you know, wide white walls that you buy. They're just kind of not uncommon to see that. So there we go. We just adjusted the brakes and everything looks good under the car. I checked the axle lube and everything's good. You can see the control arm bushings there. All good. Everything on this car is in good shape and nice, ready, fun cruiser. So we'll get it down off the jacks and call it good for now. One more shot of the floor pans. This is more from the rear of the car. So I'll just kind of shine the light in directly. But you can kind of see it looks pretty darn good. Good looking old car here. There's part of the muffler, the original. Well, it's not the original, but it's the exhaust system that was on the car when I bought it. Still seems to be pretty darn good. Doesn't seem to have any leaks in it or anything. I got the car back down on off the jacks onto the floor. So everything's done on the floor pans and car's looking good. I did drive it this past weekend. Sunday was a beautiful day in the 50s and sunny, not a cloud in the sky, and the rain had washed all the salt away. So I did take the Catalina. The clock there says 29,122 miles and 7/10. So it did get a little run today with the, well, not today, but Sunday with the new seats. Drove it over to a friend's house so he could check out the seats, and everything's going good on the car. We got the brakes adjusted and the chassis greased up, so it's ready for some cruising. One thing I wanted to make clear, I don't know if I did or not, but these old cars did not have self-adjusting brakes. Now I suppose you could get the hardware and put it on and make them self-adjusting. You'd have to get a new star wheel and some other odds and ends in the brake system, but it doesn't really need to be adjusted that often. The brakes on this car have never been adjusted since I put them on, and usually after you break them in, that's when you need to adjust them. So that was the first adjustment since the initial putting the brakes on the car, and I didn't have to readjust the rear brakes at all. They were fine. So I find just leaving them the way they are, because as for the amount I drive these cars, it's like once every 5 years I need to adjust the brakes on them. So it's really no big deal. It doesn't take very much effort. And usually if I have the car jacked up to lube the chassis or something or do some service on it, I just spin the wheels and go around and check them. And I do that on all my old cars. And if I find they need adjusting, I just do it. And it doesn't take very much time at all, very little effort, and you're done. So that's why I never put self-adjusters on them. It's just easy enough to adjust them, and then periodically you can look in there and see if how the shoes are doing and wearing. So, but for, again, you know, it's not very often you have to go around and adjust them. But they are manual adjusting. They are not automatic adjusting. So they do need periodic adjustment. Years ago, if you went to a lot of, you see, and if you look at old magazine ads or old promo commercials or something, you'll see that they offer free brake adjustment with your meal if you go into this drive-in restaurant or drive-in theater or wherever. Because back then, you had to manually adjust the brakes on your car. They did not have self-adjusting brakes. So a lot of places just did brake adjustments, and in turn, you know, if you did business there, they would do your brake adjustment for free. It's really no big deal. If you enjoy my channel, please subscribe to it. And again, thank you for watching my videos.